Hello positive readers, it's Positive Writer today with another video, and today I want to come to you all today with a delicious and juicy discussion video that is not starting off but continuing my dystopian videos. You can expect a lot more since I am a dystopian writer. I wrote Ichikan, which is a young adult dystopian in 2015. The sequel is going to come out soon, so get your copy while you can. You can get it on Amazon for paperback, and you can get it on ebook. Because I'm a dystopian writer, I love dystopians. And if you see the book behind me, I'm going to be talking about a specific dystopian today. And that is Divergent, and specifically Allegiant. More specifically, the entire series and its theme, and specifically, why the ending of Allegiant was the best possible choice for the Divergent series as a whole. And so, I'm super excited to be here today, be talking about this with you all. I have my water back here because I am going to be talking, so I want to make sure I'm replenishing the vocal cords. My book is over here. Look at it. I have the discussion, bullet points in this notebook that I write. So sorry. God is so good because this is never broken. I've done that so many times. And this is like my writing notebook. I have a lot of good, delicious stuff in here about my current project and just a lot of other writing stuff. So I'm going to be reading from this. Not like reading from it, but just in case I forget something, which I probably won't. And anyway, what really sparked this discussion is me reading this book by K.M. Wayland. It's about your story theme and theme as a whole and why it's so important and how to put it into a book. And I got to thinking about my favorite stories that have a clear theme that you can see. And one of the main things that this book talks about is how theme is most clearly seen in reverse. So you can really only see a theme once you have a finished story and then look back through the rest of the story. And if you can detect the theme, then there it is. If you're going to detect the theme, you're going to do it that way. That's going to be the way that you do it. And so I started thinking about Divergent, and I'm like, this is a series that I consumed completely. It's a series I would never forget. Both movie and book, but, specifically, obviously, book, because it was the first thing that I kind of got my hands on. And I really wanted to just come on here, because I know that there was a lot of discrepancies and annoyance about the ending of Allegiant, and whether or not it made sense to the book, and whether or not it was something that she just did for shock value, and blah, blah, blah. I also am a Veronica Ross stan. I support her 100%, and so it's one of those things where it's like, I never thought she was doing it for shock value. I also cried like a baby when I read the ending, but I also understood, even then from a writer's perspective, why she made the decision. And today I'm here, all these years later after reading that book, literally so many years, and just to come on here and tell y'all that it actually made some sense, and that I see every bit of sense in it now, even more so than I did back then, even though I accepted the decision as being something that she thought was good. And so without further ado, I want to get into this. If you didn't know, I'm going to be spoiling the end of Allegiant and basically the entire rest of the series. If you have not read it yet, go read it. I love it. It literally has turned 10. It turned 10 last year, and Insurgent, which is my favorite book in the series, turns 10 this year, and so it's crazy. But please read these books if you have not read them yet. They are literary masterpieces, and I love them very much. If you just, again, it's just really great stories. And if you stay through this whole video, even through the spoilers, you'll understand why it's such a great story. So you can say if you want to, honestly, because understanding the theme of something is something that is very important to me as an artist and as a consumer of art. And so this series does it well. And so without further ado, I just want to get into this because it's something that's personal to me and very important. I want to share it with y'all. So first, I want to just talk about the thing everybody always, thinks of when they think of this series, or they think of the end of the series. Tristas' sacrifice. Tris makes the choice to sacrifice herself for Caleb, in Caleb's space, and not thinking that she's gonna die, but she makes sure that if anybody's gonna die in this scenario, then it's gonna be her. Because she believes that she can fight. She knows she can fight serums, because she's Divergent and she has this entire time. And so, she's like, okay, I'm gonna do it. But that decision, I think, is just so much more based in her own selflessness and bravery, a lot more than her own confidence in whether or not she can fight the serum. That had a lot less to do with it than the fact that her brother was going to go in there and potentially die. You know what I'm saying? She knows in her heart that Caleb cannot fight the death serum. And so she's not going to let him do that. She is 100% willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that he does not die in this scenario. And this is why her sacrifice is key to the story of Divergent as a whole, and key to her character as a whole, her character arc. Because the theme, to me, in Divergent, the entire series has multiple themes because there are 3 books. Sorry, 3 books, and they all have their individual themes. I looked online, and people were talking about like, oh, like, you know, the themes in the books are like, you know, there is individualism in the first book, and then there's like forgiveness and stuff in like the last 2 books, and you know, making decisions for yourself. That was like very common. I saw a lot of that, and family also was big themes. But I think that, again, this book is really helping me to realize and to really pin down theme as being a really specific thing, and not just some random like one word, but an actual thematic question that is being asked and then answered by the series, proved or disproved. And this series is proving the notion that other people and their differences are supposed to be used to build up each other, to build up society and one another, whether it be in a family or a friend group or a society or a community or city, whatever. We are meant to enhance each other with our differences instead of being ostracized and separated because of them. And I believe that this is Divergent's theme. I know it's the theme because it's so not obvious. Like, again, me and my sister were talking about this theme last night, and again, we've been consuming Divergent for like years. And so it's funny how kind of hard it was to come up with a theme, like to think of, okay, so through all these books, these like 100-page books, like 500-page books, what is a theme? Like, what is the pattern? What is the thing that they're saying at the end of it that you're supposed to walk away from? And I myself didn't even understand it until about today, because I was thinking, and again, I looked online, I'm like, okay, what is this theme? And again, the last line of Allegiant is, we mend each other. And it's basically in a scene where Tobias and Christina, I'm gonna cry because just saying their names on camera, I haven't done that in so long. I miss them. Tobias and Christina are like walking away from like a train platform, or they're walking up to a train platform, and some of the other Dauntless people are there, like Zeke and Shauna. They're all there. They're there. Okay, the squad is there, and Christina's like talking to him, and like she like walks up to him, and we know that, you know, we know how they met, you know, we know how their characters started off. Christina's like this loudmouth candor girl, and 4 is like, you know what I'm saying, again, he's 4 at that point, he's like this hardened instructor who's, you know, takes no for an never takes no for an answer, and he's not ruthless, but he's very firm, and he's not like gonna change that, and so Tris like changes that for him, and so to now see them as, again, he's Tobias now, and she's Christina, but she's like this, you know, she's much more mature. She's gone through so much, and you can see that there's a vibrance to her now. That she has shed the arrogance and the brashness of candor, you know, but not in a way that is compromising to her spirit, because this whole scene basically is her walking up to him and being like, hey, you know, how you doing? And she will not let him, like, say no. She will not let him lie. And he knows this. And so he tells the truth, you know, how he's being. And he tells her that he's not doing well, and just because it's going to be hard forever, you know. And she's like, yeah, you're right. And then she tells him that, yeah, life is hard forever because stuff keeps happening. But she's waiting for those good moments, because in the past there have always been good moments, and there will continue to be them, and so she hangs on for those moments. And then he's like, oh my gosh, yeah, you're right, you know, and he's like, oh, okay. And so the last lines is kind of in a kind of omniscient sort of voice. It's still in his point of view, but he's kind of just talking about how life continues to hurt us. Like, we continue going through all this crazy stuff and whatever, and the series speaks to that. Like, we see from the first book to the last book, even like stuff that happened before the events of the first book, we see life hurting these characters. Like, we see these things horrible things being thrown at him. Like, you know, Tobias is, you know what I'm saying, he's abused by his dad, and his mom, like, faces her own death, and then comes back and is like, hey, and then Tris, like, loses her parents, and her brother, like, goes and erudite and, like, betrays the whole faction, and, you know, and it is instrumental to then getting her back in Insurgent, and it's just like, whoa, like, all this horrible stuff, you know, betrayal and, you know, sorrow and grief, all this horrible things that keep, you know, not to mention all the people who die, trying to end this war, and keep the peace in Chicago. It's just like so much stuff. But Christina there is then that, you know, that person that really speaks that voice of reason in. And that is what, again, points to this large thematic question that this whole series answers, which is, we mend each other. We are given people, like, we are born in this earth, you know, with other people so that we can help each other, you know, and that is, you know, what we see on those last few pages of Allegiant. And Tristan's sacrifice, which is not at all on the last pages of Allegiant, speaks to that thematic question too, because this entire time, Tristan's character, you know, in the first book, we see her step out on Dauntless. You know, she's like, I'm going to go and I'm going to choose it, but only after Caleb is kind of like, choose for yourself and the family, you know, kind of like shifty, shaky, you know, because we know he's going to choose erudite, but from, you know, his counsel and from her mom sort of like, you know, shifty sort of, you know, you can just tell that they all have their little rebellions, you know, in this society where everybody's trapped. Everyone has their little rebellion and they're like family. And these rebellions around her, those differences in the people around her, are what pushes her then to be like, okay, well, I can then make my own informed decision, you know? And then her mom, you know, being like, oh, I actually support you in this. All of those things are what lead her and continue her, propel her on to continue, like, being the heroine of this story and making all these great choices and helping everybody. And so her sacrifice is that last thing we get to see her do that speaks to all of the other sacrifices and all of the other things that she's learned over the books. And I think that it also speaks to the large theme that, again, the factions dividing everyone up based on their differences and then ostracizing people who have too many differences will lead to the same problem as ostracizing, you know, individual people because they're too different. Like, oh, I don't want to talk to this person because they're not, you know. And so the series has forced everyone to sort of, you know, be moshed together, just like these factions have been moshed together. And it shows you that there's beauty that can be had there. You know, that there is more beauty in the togetherness of being with other people and accepting other people than there is in ostracizing people and acting superior to everyone around you, you know? And so that's really the theme of Divergent. And so Trist's sacrifice speaks immediately to that because it goes along with the decision she makes in each book. Choosing Dauntless, which is in the first book, is her, like, big inciting incident is when she chooses Dauntless and then goes to a completely different faction that's, like, all, like, completely opposite to Abnegation, which is, like, these, you know, very meek, very, you know, very passive, very giving spirits, to these very wild and free, like, not contained at all, people who just basically do whatever they want to do. And then we can just see her character kind of, you know what I'm saying, break a little bit and, you know, all that crazy stuff. But that decision, you know, was an individualistic thing that she chose to do. And it was brave. You know, and so it was one of those things that was like, she had to do that, for the whole story to start, really. And in Insurgent, her biggest decision is, when she chooses to go to Erudite. She chooses to turn herself into Erudite, after they start killing all of her friends and making them actually kill themselves. And they promise that it's going to keep happening unless she turns herself in, to Erudite to die. Or to be tested or whatever. And so, that is the big decision she makes there. And, again, her intentions behind the first decision, good, perfect, amazing. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's choosing individualistic things. She's like, I'm going to choose something that I think is good for me. You know, I need to find myself, and I can't do that in Abnegation. So I'm going to choose Dauntless, especially after seeing my brother do it, and then after seeing, you know, my parents, and, you know, just all the things that we see her do up until that point have led her to this point, you know. And so she chooses that, and that's a really great choice, and it's informed, and it's, you know, it's pure. It's something that she chose in her heart because she felt like that was going to be the best thing for her, and she stands by that. And then in Insurgent, the choice is made from an adulterated perspective because the entire book she feels like she is not worthy of forgiveness and she's not worthy of grace because she killed Will, and so she doesn't even want to tell anybody about it because she doesn't think that she deserves anybody's, you know, forgiveness for that or sympathy for that. She doesn't want that, and because she doesn't think it's, you know, something that she deserves. And she goes through a lot of very suicidal sort of tendencies where she feels like she doesn't even deserve to live anymore because she took his life, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on with that. And so this final decision she makes to go anyway is less of a selfless one and was more of a self-destructive one. Was more of a self-righteous sort of, I deserve to die, so I'm gonna go and do this, you know? And we watch her do that, and it's horrible, and it leads to a whole bunch of other clownery, you know, because Four then goes with her, and then he sacrifices himself too, and it's like, all this mess. Good stuff definitely comes out of it, but that decision was made from a space of, you know, her leaning into lies because she does deserve forgiveness, and she's not allowing her to do that. You know, she's not allowing herself to believe that, even though Four is telling her and stuff. And so, yeah. And then we have this big decision. Her choosing to give her life for Caleb. Now, this decision, again, it seemed like, oh my God, and again, her obviously dying from this decision also can feel like very, very broken from the story, very random, very like, why did she do this? Why did Veronica decide to write this? But when you think about it in the grand scheme of all of these decisions that she makes, it makes not only perfect sense, but it is the perfect last decision to bring her arc full circle. Because, think about it, again, this series is speaking to the fact that you cannot have bravery without selflessness, and kindness without, you know, knowledge, and, you know, honesty without kindness, and you cannot have, you know what I'm saying, these very human traits, these essential human traits, without having all of them together. You cannot be exhibiting, you know, you can't be living a life where you're only leaning into one and forgetting the rest of them, because then your life is not full, and you are then, you are falling victim to the things that these things can become when you know, when overexposed. There's a quote from the villain of the story, which is David, who is actually killing Tris, who explains this. He explains how you cannot have, bravery, too much bravery and you're this, and too much this and you're this. Which basically is just debunking the entire fashion system as a whole, because it divides people when it should be unifying them, and unifying the things that make us human, and the way that we should be going about acting in those things. And so Trist's final decision speaks to her own character growth in this, timeline of figuring this out, because her decision is both brave, it's informed because she's seen herself, it's brave because, just going into a room with somebody who has a gun and where there's death serum, that's a brave thing. You know what I'm saying? People aren't just gonna be like, I was gonna do that, like, okay. And then it's selfless because it's something that, she's giving her life for her brother. She knows her brother's gonna die if he goes in there, and even though he's willing to do that, she knows that she doesn't want him. She doesn't want that for him. And she's never wanted that for him. Like, she's always protected Caleb, and she's always forgiven him. She's always given him mercy and the benefit of the doubt. So she's not gonna just like let him die now, even though it would be so easy. And it's what a lot of the readers want. It's what the reader would want. It's what even you as an author might want from a character who has been betraying this other character and kind of acting not the best. You would want to see that character then given that same treatment, but Trish has never done that to him, and so it would be completely, counter to the entire story and her own character and character growth that we've seen her exhibit this far, for her to have let him go in there. That would have just been ridiculous. And then it's also an informed decision, so she's just using her intelligence, because she knows that death serum is going to kill anybody who's not divergent. She knows that she can fight it in theory, because she's fought every other serum. And so she's using all these, like, faction traits, to basically, make this informed, great decision. This is the thing that ends, her story. And you see the bravery, you see the selflessness, you see all these things, these traits that have been, ostracized from each other. You see them coming together in this final decision that Triss makes, that ends her life. And then we get Forrest's point of view, and him having to deal with that pain of losing Triss, which, heartbreaking. Watching a character lose somebody that's that close to them sucks. But think about this. Again, faction before blood is a thing that is very thick and heavy in this series. Caring for one's own before each other, before anybody else, is another thing that is seen. And it's also a theme that is shown in actions that suck. When people are doing the faction before blood thing, they're turning against their family in favor of a faction. Like, that's ridiculous. That's counterproductive to families as a whole, and not good. And so we see these things being held up, these beliefs are being held up by people who are not doing the best, things and making the best decisions. And so when Forrest is faced with the decision to whether or not he should forget all his memory, regardless of the fact that he's basically like a leader now, and essential to Chicago's well-being, the fact that he should just, forget his entire, history in life because he can't deal with this pain, or should continue to deal with it. And again, here comes into play the thematic element of the book, which is, again, people being menders, people being the people that you should, people being together. And then it's Christina who comes in and steps in and does not let him take the memory serum like he wants to, and reminds him that life is beautiful. That reminds him that because Triss made this informed decision, this, selfless and brave decision for her brother. It was to show, it shows us all that we can make those informed and great decisions, for someone else's good. That we don't always have to think only about ourselves when we make decisions that are monumental and big. And that we really shouldn't only be thinking about ourselves ever, because everything that we do affects everyone else. Like, obviously, people could just be like, oh my god, Triss, why would you, give your life for your stupid brother when your boyfriend's across the world and, he's gonna miss you and all of that. But she wasn't thinking about that. Is Forrest's life in danger right now? Like, no. And if it was anybody else in Caleb's place, I do believe that she would have still taken, their place, even if it was like Peter. Because in Triss's character, we have always seen her exhibit this selflessness and this mercy towards people who don't deserve it. She's given grace many, many, many times, and has held her tongue and held her gun, and not given them or dished out the revenge that they deserved against these people who have wronged her very much. And so again, that was her defining moment. Triss and Four are interesting characters, and they're the protagonists because they hold up their own decisions and they stand by them even when they suck. And when they are going through psychological pain, they still do that. And so Triss had to make the decision because it was her thing. That was her thing, and no one else had to be a part of that. Like, that was not something else that that she needed to consult the entire world about. That was something that she felt she needed to do. And again, I stand by her, and Veronica is this amazing person, because I'm not even getting into her author decisions yet, because I'm still in the story. But Four now has this decision whether or not he wants to do the selfless thing and, you know, stay alive and stay alert and stay himself in light of all this pain, when he could just, you know, give in and just decide not to. And again, Christina is there, and she is, you know, the thing that helps remind him that this whole time they've been giving their lives and willing to risk their lives for not only the greater good of each other, you know, but the greater good of Chicago as a whole, which means that this decision would then throw all that out of the water. You know, the decision would be completely selfish and something that would not, you know, that if you could remember making it, would be something that he would regret at some point. And so she gets him to see that. And that's one of the two plot points, the last two plot points of the book. And then the last one is Evelyn and Tobias, which is Evelyn is Tobias' mom. And so Evelyn has been basically the antagonist of this whole book because she has now taken over for Janine and is now at war with Amity. Because Amity is cool with peace and Evelyn is not. Evelyn wants to like kill all the erudite people and stuff. It's a lot going on. But Tobias tells Evelyn to throw down her guns to stop this like war she's been, you know, brewing, and to come, you know what I'm saying, and you know what I'm saying, you know, join with him and rebuild the city instead of, you know, causing more carnage. And he tells her, he gives her an ultimatum, and she's like, you're gonna lose me. Like, if you don't do this, I'm not your son anymore, and, you know, we're just, you know, we're not doing this anymore, and I'm done. And he also makes the decision to not go to his father about this, because he feels like he cannot reconcile with him. And so he's making the decision to be vulnerable, and to put his own sort of memory and stuff on the line, in favor for his mom to hopefully make the right decision. And she does. And again, she would have continued doing every single wrong thing she was doing in that book if it was not for Tobias stepping in as that person, that voice of reason to say, this is not cool, please come back to the right side of things. Please make the better decisions. And so we see Christina extend that hand to him, and then we see him extend that hand to her. And then it all leads up to this last final page of Allegiant, which is just saying that how essential other people are to our survival. And not survival, but thrival. You know? Like, how essential other people are to helping us to live the best lives that we can. You know? And how essential they are to helping us to hang on when life moments suck. And, you know, and when, you know, life throws all this hard stuff at us. And so, you know, before this, I was just thinking about the factions and how, you know, you can't have any of the traits without exhibiting all of them. Otherwise, society is not going to be, you know, where it's supposed to be at, and we're not going to be where we're supposed to be at, and we're going to be ostracizing people in that war. But the deeper theme really is togetherness, and that people should not be separated or ostracized. You know, that as important as individualistic ism is, and making decisions that are good for you is, societies, you know, people, families, groups, we cannot, you know, go on without loving each other and without being willing to do the tryst thing for any person. Because that really is what her sacrifice means to me. It's just showing that, you know, her willingness to do this for somebody who had hurt her just shows that we all are capable of this, you know. And so, again, being able to live with that decision is then his own acknowledgement that it was not only the only right decision to make, but something that he also can replicate now too. And it's really beautiful to see in this series, because I've seen interviews with Veronica. And so many of her decisions in Allegiant are things that people call into question. You know, she decides to keep Marcus alive, and Peter does not die either. Both of these characters, Marcus and Peter, who have done really horrible things in this series, have decided to take the memory serum. Like, I'm pretty sure Marcus is actually forced to do it, but then Peter chooses to do it. And both of these things are very powerful, because Veronica talks about how she tries to kill Peter. She tries to kill Marcus. And both of these characters refuse to die. Now, when something like that happens, as an author, you can do one of two things. You can choose to kill the characters anyway, because you're the author and you have the power. Or, you can choose to let the story be. You can choose to let the story be what it's supposed to be, what it's meant to be, what it has to be to make the impact it's supposed to have, whether that angers half the population or not. And Veronica Roth chose to make those decisions. She made every single one of those brave decisions, and you know, in spite of whatever she wanted to do, with the characters in the story, and then ended up killing her own protagonist, but not killing her. Her protagonist chose to go in that room, and she could not have chosen anything else, otherwise she would then not be Tris. You know what I'm saying? Because by Veronica Roth letting her characters make the decisions instead of just forcing them one way or another, the story has then emerged as this vixen, this phoenix, you know, this rebirth thing that is so different from anything it would have been without that sacrifice, you know, and without all the emotional hurt and pain that comes after it, that we see Tobias exhibiting. And so I just applaud Veronica Roth forever and ever. There's a reason why Divergent is something that I think about like on a daily basis, and a reason why I love it, and a reason why it's like the greatest, like trilogy of all time. Because it's just like I love it, and I don't just love it, but I understand it and I feel it very deeply. And the theme is really just the entire reason, because we have books that are like really aesthetic to be inside of and really fun to be inside of for a moment, and then you leave and it's like, what even was that? And that's that lack of theme. But Divergent was never that. I mean, I was like 12 when I read Insurgent. None of this theme stuff was on my mind. I was just enjoying some people running around with some guns, some romance, some the strong girl, this strong like teenage girl who, in real life, I've never seen anybody, exhibit the sort of behavior that she was like going through, and she's like this brave queen. And I'm like, oh, like I'm enjoying the specifics about the story. But all these years later, when I step back and look at why at my love for the series and why it's going on for so long, it's so obvious that the theme is what has stayed with me in all this time. The theme is the reason why I continue to support all of Veronica Roth's like endeavors, and why her authoring, her writing has only gotten better, because she is willing to do the hard things, just like Tris. It's amazing to see when the story truly brings out your own character, and I think that as an author, you have the choice of whether or not you want to do that. Like, I think that this series has a big choice, thing on it. And with so many choices to make, it's like, what do you even do? But I just love the fact that in the end, Veronica, Tris, all these beautiful characters chose, to do the hard thing. To do the hard thing that was going to cause the most growth. And I now grow as a person when I think about it, and grow as a writer when I study it, and grow as a consumer when I acknowledge that it was her decision to make, and she still let the characters make it for her. It's just like, it gives me hope, because now the next time I'm hitting a roadblock in a story and I'm trying to do something that the characters don't want me to do, I can then sit back and let them do what they're supposed to do, because then the story truly can emerge as what it is supposed to be. I largely enjoyed talking about this today. Divergent, like I said, is like my favorite trilogy ever. It's so good, and I loved every second of it, really. And one day I probably will reread it at some point. Even though just talking about it right now and just rereading those last pages of Allegiant really does hurt. Again, I think that something that hurts can be such an opportunity for growth. And even though we want to run the other way, and we would rather let people give us a nice ending, and but I just love it. I love it when people go the route that is not well traveled, especially when it's not like for a shock value. Like, if it's for shock value, it's like, okay, it loses its meaning then. But you can just tell when it's an informed decision that the author chose to let the characters make themselves. And Veronica Roth succeeded 100%. So, anyway, I love Veronica Roth. This is basically just like a love letter to Veronica Roth and her writing and her characters and her world and her, book, because I will never forget Divergent. It will always be something I carry with me every single day. And the theme is something that I continue to study as I read this book and as I just write and do my own thing. So, I remember that God loves you. Remember to always be brave. And that life is beautiful. And a quote that I was looking at last year, January, says that life shrinks or expands according to one's courage. And so I'll leave you with that. I love you. And I'll see you all later with another video. Peace out.